So James Gunn's Superman movie came out about 2 weeks ago, and I really enjoyed this movie. So I thought I'd go to YouTube and look at the intelligent discourse we all know is on the platform, and find me some critique videos of this movie. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video, just like my Squid Game Season 3 video. Responding to a couple videos bashing on James Gunn's new Superman movie. So without wasting any more time, let's get into the first video from Ben Shapiro.
You know, I went with my wife. My wife and I always have an interesting time watching movies together, because when I go, I'm very analytical about what I think of the movie. My wife sort of gets an overall gestalt, and it's mostly like, that was fun. And so my wife's review was, that was fun.
Damn, sounds like your wife has good taste. You should be a little bit more like her.
My overall problem with the movie is that you are taking the most iconic American IP of all time, Superman, which is to be treated with a certain level of respect. That doesn't mean it has to be, grand mythology, the way that Zack Snyder wants to do. Like, my standard for Superman is not Man of Steel. My standard for Superman movies is 1978 Richard Donner, the best version of Superman. Overall, here is my problem. James Gunn is the wrong director, writer, creator for this thing.
I saw Chewbacca on the cover of People magazine. I was like, oh my God.
He's just wrong for it. It's Guardians of the Galaxy with Superman in it. And so that means it's all kind of a mess. It's an overstuffed movie in every way. It's visually overstuffed. In terms of plot, the plot holes are big enough to drive a truck through them. There are character problems. And all of it is just kind of wrapped around this gauzy, fast-paced, jokey tone that doesn't mesh with Superman as central part of Americana, to me.
You know, I'm gonna respond to that point, but first, let's ask Superman himself what he thinks of these reviews. He says, I understand that opinions differ. As a hero, I don't fight for perfect scores or critical acclaim. I fight for what's right. Each movie is just another chapter in the greater story of hope. He adjusts his glasses with a gentle smile. Besides, there's more to life than just movies. I have responsibilities as both Clark Kent and Superman, protecting people, seeking justice, and making a difference in the world. Well, you know, he's certainly nicer than me, but I guess that's why he's Superman, you know what I'm saying? But if you want to try this out for yourself, then make sure to check out the Polybuzz app. In this app, you can chat with and create unique character chatbots by yourself and talk with others. With over 40 million downloads worldwide and over 20 million characters ranging from celebrities, video game characters, sports athletes, comic book characters, pop culture characters in general, it's a great app for you to be able to unleash your creativity to your heart's desire. You can download the app by clicking my link in the description, where you will also find my promo code Colin77, which you can use to unlock premium features. Thank you, Polybuzz, for sponsoring this video, and now let's get on to the response. So he says the movie is Guardians of the Galaxy, but Superman, and you think that this means that the movie is overstuffed, too jokey, too fast-paced, etc. But Superman has always been lighthearted. Maybe not in this exact manner, like James Gunn style, but it's been in a similar manner before, in the DC animated movies and the shows, and in the very same movie that you're quite literally referencing for your gold standard of Superman movies. That movie's not exactly not lighthearted and, corny.
Just a minute, mister. Just a minute. Now, I realize, of course, that times are tough for some these days, but this isn't the answer. You can't solve society's problems with a gun.
You know something, buddy? You're right. I'm gonna turn over a new leaf.
Good for you, sir. That's the spirit. See, he doesn't really want to hurt anybody.
Like again, yeah, sure, James Gunn is adding his own style to it, and it's following his typical direction style, but just like the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, it still has a completely fine plot, it has really good character work, but it's apparently some big mess with character problems and massive plot holes, so, let's continue with the video to hear about those.
James Gunn's sensibility is always to be subversive. That is what he does. He does subversive in Guardians of the Galaxy, right? He takes a comic book movie and he turns it into sort of a potty-mouthed sitcom.
Don't drink fountain water, you idiot. That's disgusting.
And he does the same thing with Suicide Squad. He takes that same sensibility, and now he's doing that with Superman.
Superman robots, I thought I told you to keep an eye on him.
We feed the canine, but he is unruly. And he realizes we are not flesh and blood and couldn't, in our heart of hearts, care less whether he lives or dies.
And I get that after the interpretation of the Snyderverse is over-serious, he's reversing himself into completely the opposite direction. But what that means is that he's constantly subverting everything.
I was raised with a dog that was my sister.
So the movies are subversive potty-mouth sitcoms because they have comedy within them. Well, that's certainly a standard to hold.
The very beginning of the movie, you are told that Superman is the most powerful metahuman, right? There's like a placard that says, 30 years ago, the metahumans arrived. 3 years ago, Superman emerged. 3 weeks ago, there was an invasion, and now 3 minutes ago, Superman's ass got kicked.
I'm not messing around. I'm doing important stuff.
He's not very super. He is not the Man of Steel. He is not invulnerable. He gets his ass kicked routinely. He gets locked up in a prison with a character who's making kryptonite out of his hands.
Sorry, what?
So he's not super and not the Man of Steel per se, just because he's losing a fight to someone who's literally his clone. And because he willingly got arrested and was depowered by his most famous weakness. I mean, yeah, I guess if this is the logic we run with, then there's no version of Superman that is super, quote unquote. And I like how he puts this clip saying like, oh, I'm sorry, what? That the dude's making kryptonite out of his hand, as if the movie doesn't just blatantly easily explain why he's able to do that.
He's constantly in victim mode. Like Green Lantern has much more success in this movie. Mr. Terrific has much more success in this movie than Superman.
How do Green Lantern and Mr. Terrific have more success in the movie? And what exactly are they succeeding in that Superman is not? They don't take down any threats that Superman could not handle. In fact, the biggest threat within this movie is something that Superman handles, while the Justice Gang would not be able to. When they fought the other two metahumans, Mr. Terrific almost died.
Superman's parents from Krypton, if you're gonna go through the mythology, send him to Earth so that he can be a moral guide for people on Earth using his great powers to stop evil from happening to them. In this movie, his parents from Krypton send him there. This is the big revelation of the movie. His parents send him there to dominate the life on Earth as an alien invasion, essentially, and to create a harem of Earth women to have his many babies. So immediately you're taking the expectation of what you know about his Krypton parents and flipping it on its head.
Okay.
I'm still waiting for him to point out a problem.
His parents, Ma and Pa Kent, in the original, they are noble and they are wise. They're kind of salt of the earth. Here, they're basically kind of, I don't know, like down home types who don't seem to, they live in a kind of a crappy house. They're the kind of people who call the TV the box. They're the kind of folks who are sitting around and you know, kind of scratching their butts. They're purposely cast as ugly and non-noble. It doesn't mean everything they say is bad, it isn't, but
they're purposefully cast as ugly and non-noble. First of all, why does what they look like matter? Like, second of all, Clark's Earth parents, just like in many iterations, are there for him, just like any other parents to uplift and comfort him when he needs it. That sounds noble enough to me. And we have a great scene for Superman's character and his dad, where his dad is uplifting him after Clark found out the truth about his parents from Krypton. You say it doesn't mean everything they say is bad, so it's like, why even mention this? Like, what is the point you're trying to make? You still have not pointed out a flaw within the writing.
And by the way, both of them are alive in this, right? The original Superman mythos is that Pa Kent dies, and that's what sends Superman on his journey. Anyway.
Okay.
Crypto. The super dog is a terrible dog, is a dog that does not, like an idiot dog. Like way worse than my dog Happy. My dog Happy, way better than this dog, and my dog makes trouble. This dog is a mess.
Okay.
Supergirl, who you get introduced to for a hot second at the very end. Supergirl is a drunken teenage brat. Right, like anything that you think you know about the Superman universe, James Gunn is determined to debunk in the first half hour of the film. I think that it's a betrayal of the original IP and mildly upsetting. Not like hugely upsetting, but mildly upsetting. That is my critique of James Gunn. He is not the right person for this film.
Literally all you have pointed out is that things are different from what you're used to. This doesn't mean that James Gunn isn't fit to direct this movie. Making changes to an almost century-year-old IP is not a problem. There's nothing about this movie that doesn't still keep the most important things to like about this character intact. And you haven't given a single explanation as to why these changes make the movie poorly written, or why James Gunn is not fit as the director.
Because James Gunn is not capable of delving, he's not capable of delving into a single character and examining his motivations and what's interesting about that character. He can't do it with Superman, he can't do it with Lois, he can't do it with Lex. Instead, he decides he's just going to toss everything into the stew. And so you end up with this sort of ADHD film where a bunch of things are going on at the same time, but you never get a good, interesting perspective on anybody who's in the film.
This is the person that said he watches movies from a more analytical view. The person who can't comprehend the basic character motivations and ideals put forward in the movie he's reviewing right now. Superman is Superman because he believes in doing the right thing, and he wants to fulfill the purpose that he believes his parents put him on Earth to do. Throughout the movie, his actions to uphold these ideals are challenged by not only himself after the revelation about his parents, but also by people like Lois, Lex, and the other heroes. He struggles to be looked at like a god and having to be perfect, but also being just as human as the rest of the people looking up to him. Lois clashes with Clark on his actions, and in the first 3 scenes in the movie, we get to understand not only Lois's character, but her relationship issues with Clark and people in general. She cares about the truth, and she has disagreements with how Clark interviews himself to give an idealized interview that's unchallenged. She has problems with how his actions can spark even worse consequences. She has problems trusting people and wants to get to the bottom of things, but also has integrity and always keeps the truth first and foremost in her journalism. And her motivation throughout the movie is getting to the bottom of what Lex is doing so that she can expose the truth about him. Lex Luthor is a psychopath who is the opposite of Superman, and he has no regard for anyone but himself, and he is also very jealous and envious of Superman and the fact that he's looked upon like a god. Meanwhile, Lex feels like he's worked hard for everything in his life and he doesn't get the same recognition for his talents. He has a superiority complex. These are very clear character beats explored throughout the movie. You just have no media literacy.
So Green Lantern is there, and he's kind of just a schmuck, and he's there as comic relief. And then you have Mr. Terrific, who's the actual hero of the film, who you learn nothing about other than he's just kind of a noble do-gooder fellow. And you have all these superheroes who are wandering around. You never get any information about them that makes them interesting or sympathetic or even particularly cool.
This is like one of the only like 2 things in this review that I kind of agree with. Well, I do think the other heroes' inclusion is like a nice addition to the world building of the movie in this new universe. We could have learned more about them, but they're not exactly the focus of the movie, and it's fine to have side characters that don't have their character focused on as much. This is the case in plenty of narratives. Some characters are just used as ways to add world building and plot progression. It's something that can be done better in other narratives, for sure. Like, obviously, in an ideal narrative, you want as many characters in the narrative to have as much depth as possible, but it's not some major flaw that there's side characters that don't have as much depth as the characters that are the main focus of the story. But I will say that people in my comments under my Superman video pointed out that I didn't really pick up on as well when I first watched the movie, was that the Justice Gang are more like, I guess like mission-focused superheroes, like they're trying to get the job done, and they're there to show like the difference between that kind of superhero and Superman, and how they go about taking on threats by any means necessary, as well as them not being focused on saving everyone like Superman is, if it gets in the way of taking down the threat. Green Lantern and Hawkgirl get involved in the Baravian conflict and save the innocent people even if there would be consequences from this, just to save innocent lives, unlike they would do in the middle point of the movie when they wouldn't even like engage with a conflict with the American government to try and help Superman. And Superman also winds up doing what he has to do in order to stop his clone, ultimately killing him when there was no other options left. So while the Justice Gang doesn't have like the most depth, I think their actions and what they do with their characters more than justifies them being in the movie. And again, I think it's a nice addition to the world building.
But you don't know the motivations of any of the villains, except for Lex, who it turns out is just really kind of jealous of Superman because Superman has superpowers, and Lex is like, I'm really smart, and Superman is really strong, so why do people like Superman more than they like me? Which is a pretty boring motivation, to be frank.
Well, Lex is the only villain to really learn the motivation of, as he's literally the main antagonist in the movie and the reason why all the conflict within it happens to begin with. And if you think Lex being an opposite parallel to Superman is boring, then by all means you can have your bad opinion, but nothing you've pointed out tells me why there is a flaw in the writing. Everything about his motivation makes sense, he's entertaining to watch, and his internal struggles bounce off the main protagonist very well. Sounds like a great villain to me.
So the characters are complete pastiches. They're just cardboard cutouts. Even the moments that are supposed to hit don't hit because there's so much going on in the background because James Gunn cannot control his ADHD. He just cannot.
No, I think the problem is that you've proven you didn't pay attention in the movie and you don't have any media literacy.
There's a scene where Clark and Lois, they've had a fight and now they're back together and they're having a talk. And it's supposed to be this very intimate talk where they're speaking with each other. And literally outside the window, Green Lantern and Mr. Terrific and Hawkgirl are fighting a gigantic sort of eye monster that looks like it's from Suicide Squad.
Stop it right there, Joker. You never get me, Will you catch him?
It's extremely distracting because he's James Gunn and everything has to be some sort of dumb joke. You're like, well, shouldn't Superman be doing something about it? No, let them handle it. Again, that's irritating.
It makes complete sense why Superman is letting the Justice Gang handle this. They have the capabilities to do so, and he's not mentally all there to deal with it currently. So it's not out of character for him to not be helping here. But I can also see where he's coming from with it being distracting. I also kind of said the same thing in my video. I think what James Gunn was trying to show was where Superman was at mentally, and that monster being fought in the background really like puts into perspective the gravity of that. At best faith, that's like what I got out of it. I don't really think it was his intention to make this a joke, but I can definitely understand it being distracting.
As far as the plot itself makes very little sense. The plot is basically that Lex Luthor has decided that he is going to make a deal with a foreign politician who the left wants to believe is both Vladimir Putin and Benjamin Netanyahu, but actually is just kind of nothing, is going to invade another country. And Superman stops that invasion. Apparently, Lex wants to use this as an excuse to box up Superman, saying that he's running counter to American foreign policy. Now, we've seen that iteration in other movies. right? That was in Batman versus Superman. You've seen it in other versions of the Superman story, but it's not really taken kind of to its ultimate extreme politically. In any case, it turns out that what he really wants is to annex half of this separate country. He's going to split it with this other dictator. One major plot hole. Lex Luthor is obviously the smartest person in the film. So smart, he can create his own universes. This is a major plot point. And he is concerned about a relatively small piece of land occupied by third worlders. This is his big plan. And later it turns out that he said, oh, no, I started that war just so that I could get people to turn against Superman.
Wait. We're not just gonna slide past what you just said. You just said that this plot point doesn't make sense. Then literally point out a problem with the plot that you had, then explain why the problem that you just pointed out actually makes sense. You can't make this shit up. Like, you can't.
Okay, well, he does that halfway through the film, and then he jails him, and then he leaves him alive and explains this secondary plan that apparently was his primary plan, sort of, but he doesn't kill Superman at the time for a reason that remains undisclosed.
The reason is quite literally disclosed.
You wouldn't be telling me any of this.
If we ever planned on letting you out, no. You'd be terminated already if it was up to me. But first, the government has some questions they want answered.
Just how dense can a person be?
The entire plot is a complete mess. If you tried to chart it, there's no way to do it because James Gunn doesn't care about plot. James Gunn doesn't care about characters. James Gunn cares about jokes and aesthetics. That's what James Gunn cares about.
Nobody cares anymore.
That's crazy, because you've pointed out like one thing about the plot that even if that was a problem doesn't make the entire plot bad, and it wasn't even a problem, and you just pointed out why it wasn't a problem, and it's crazy, because most of, if not all of James Gunn's movies have better plots and character work than your gold standard for a Superman movie.
Okay, the visuals are, when I say a mess, I mean that the visuals are CGI vomit, like complete CGI vomit. So James Gunn has an addiction to kind of gross and weird imagery, which doesn't really fit in the context of the, again, Americana that is Superman. And so there's some really gross and weird images, particularly in the Pocket universe, where you have characters who are turning themselves into weird tentacly octopuses, and you have people's eyes being attacked on a wide variety of it. He has an obsession with eyes, James Gunn, and you can see it in Suicide Squad. He has like an obsession with the eyeball being pierced. And it's very strange and off-putting. My wife was very off-put by a lot of this imagery. It feels like psychedelic LSD CGI vomit is what it feels like for large portions of the film.
So, just so I'm hearing this correctly, you think a movie about an alien and superhumans that also features a different dimension is just CGI vomit because it has unnatural imagery. Okay. And also, speaking about the quality of the CGI, listen, I'm no expert, and there was some spotty moments throughout the movie, but overall, for the most part, the CGI in the movie was really fucking good. So I don't know. I mean...
You never really get a kinetic scene of Superman doing something cool. You have multiple scenes of giant heavy objects falling on Superman and Superman stopping the giant heavy objects from falling to save an individual. Again, another plot hole. You'll have giant building. The entire building will fall, and he will stop the building from falling to save one person or a chipmunk who is in the way. But it's an entire building full of people, so presumably all those people are dead.
Presumably they're not dead, because the city is literally being evacuated. So the movie literally tells you that nobody is in these buildings anymore. And the people that are still in the city are actively getting away, and Superman is helping them do that in this scene that you're mentioning, which is a scene of Superman doing something cool. And also, if there were people in the building, like you're suggesting, Superman would have either heard it or seen them, you know, because he has X-ray vision. Anyways, the next part of his video is just him complaining about the visuals and the music, both of which things I thought were really good, and I don't even really care to respond to that stuff anymore. And he also is just talking about political brain rot after this that I also don't really care to get into, except for one part, because this is just one of the most insane things I've ever heard in a review, so let's get to that.
The fundamental flaw in all Superman movies of my lifetime is the thing that Hollywood cannot say and will not do.
Politics. Does he still stand for truth, justice, all that stuff?
The only Superman movie that I have ever seen that uses truth, justice, and the American way is the original 1978 Superman.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
This is not just a throwaway line. It is deeply important to the character of Superman. Why? Well, because take Superman just as a character. Superman is unbelievably powerful, unstoppable. He's faster than anyone. He has X-ray and laser vision. He's stronger than anyone, right? He's basically a god on Earth, and the biggest god. He's Zeus, right? He can do whatever he wants. And so, why is he the good guy? Why isn't Lex Luthor right?
What?
Because, let's be real, if there were a person on Earth who actually had those powers, Americans would rightly be very much afraid of that. Correctly. As Federalist 51 suggests, you need ambition to counteract ambition. If any one person had ultimate power, what you're really talking about is a philosopher king. And that's pretty scary because that person could be a dictator, simply doing whatever they want to the world. The only reason why Superman would be a hero as opposed to a villain is because he grew up in America, because he has the American way, right? He's emblematic of what America is. May blunder, may make mistakes, but overall stands for freedom and liberty, private property, and free speech, and all of those things.
All that stuff.
Right? All the good American stuff. There's a great comic book called Superman Red Sun. It's an alternative universe in which Superman's capsule from Krypton lands in Soviet Russia. And he grows up as the emblem of Soviet Russia. And he's evil because he grew up in Soviet Russia. Because if you give that power, that amount of power to an evil ideology, then evil ensues. So this is why it's really important. It's not just truth, justice, and the human way, or truth, justice, and all that good stuff. There's a specific definition of Americanism that says that this is why America, for example, should be a world power. Because America is better than other countries. And people who live in accordance with Americanism make the world better if they have more power. That's why America is good. Because otherwise, Superman is bad, and Lex Luthor is right, and we should restrict his power. And we should jail him. And we should check and balance him, and we should not let him be free.
This man just unironically asked why Superman is the good guy and Lex is the villain. Just because people would have the right to be scared of his power. First of all, like I went over earlier, that's not even why Lex is coming after Superman. That's just the ruse that he puts up so that the government can give him support. And for the second part of what he says about Superman being good because he represents America and he grew up there, and Hollywood is so afraid of saying the American way, blah, blah, blah. Why are we acting as if having good morality and fighting for something good is exclusive to America? It's not. That's why they changed it. Because it doesn't matter where you come from, and it doesn't even matter where you live now. Everyone is human, and everyone can live up to these standards. And like, what you're implying with that Superman Red Sun comic is that everyone in Russia is evil, which is just like, what the fuck? Again, it literally doesn't matter where you grew up in. It doesn't matter what country you are from or live in. Even people from Russia, for example, can have disagreements with their government and have disagreements with their current surrounding societal standards and ideology.
The problem is that Hollywood cannot say the American way because they don't believe in the American way. They don't believe that America is unique. They don't believe in these American basic values and principles and rights. They have a hard time even with the idea that like the values of Ma and Pa Kent back on the farm are values that ought to be promulgated in the best of all possible circumstances.
If that's the case, then why does Superman uphold these ideals in the movie? Unless you're trying to argue that he doesn't uphold good morality and all these things that you're talking about. I mean, you obviously didn't pay much attention to the movie, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's what you're trying to argue. But like, you're seriously hung up on just a motto. Truth, justice, and the American way, yeah. It's like, dude, Superman is still upholding those standards.
And so what they come away with in kind of the key moment in this movie, for example, is Pa Kent telling Clark that parents don't make missions for their kids, right? They don't make their kids kind of what they are in terms of what they should be. They give kids the tools to choose what they want to be, and then those choices make those kids what they are. Okay, that's kind of half true and half not. Of course, you give your kids the tools to make choices in life, but you also try to define the mission your kid should have in life. That's maybe the most important thing you do as a parent. Direct them in a world of choices at what is the ultimate good, what is the ultimate goal.
Bro, his dad never even says the opposite. What he says still falls in line with what you're arguing. You can give your kids a mission, as you put it, but the choices they make are still what make them who they are. He never says that parents don't try to put them down the right path. He literally says the opposite. And he also knows that you can't control your children for your whole life, because that would be moronic to think that.
Hollywood is not run by people who believe that there is such a thing as an ultimate good or an ultimate goal. It's run by moral relativists who have a kind of, at best, soft-pedaled, generic, be nice attitude toward the world, which is why Superman's defense of intervening in this foreign conflict is,
people were going to die.
Okay, well, people would die on the other side, presumably, if you didn't intervene.
Yes. No shit. That's why he says that. Like, what the fuck?
Or people die every day in conflicts all over the world. Right? The reason that Clark or Superman is supposed to intervene is because one side is right and one side is wrong.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. Superman literally intervened because he believes it's wrong for one country to invade another, taking their land and having innocent people die in the crossfire.
And unless you are willing to simply say that all foreign policy situations in which people die under any circumstances are equivalent, which I don't think is right, then you end up in this kind of weird generic place. The central question of Superman has never really been handled by any movie, and it's certainly not handled here. which is why should one person be given this much power? And the answer is he shouldn't, unless he is essentially just a metaphor for what makes America awesome, which is what Superman was designed to be. This is why Superman in the original comics is punching Hitler.
You know, for someone that rags on James Gunn about, like, not being able to have good characters and plots and blah, 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 you sure are really obsessed with them putting across a message that is shallow. Like, if Superman was only interesting because he's a metaphor, quote unquote, for what makes America awesome, okay, you can run with that if that's what you like, but there's far more interesting stuff to like about the character that stretches farther than just what makes America good. But anyways, I think we're done with that video. So moving on to the next video we have here from Critical Drinker, who, as we all know, is definitely about to give us a nice and nuanced take about the movie, right? Anyways, if you've watched his videos or my videos responding to him before, he's gonna start off his video by giving a bunch of blanketed statements that elaborate on nothing specific. So let's skip to the parts where he does talk about something specific. Also, another disclaimer, I'm just gonna skip through the parts of his videos where he's just yapping about nonsense or just praising the movie, basically just stuff I agree with, because I have nothing to respond to there, so there's no point in me playing that part of his video. And if you want to watch any of these videos that are in this video on your own, they'll all be in the description, so you can do that if you care to.
The film ditches the usual origin story and instead picks up a few years into Superman's career, where he's recently intervened to prevent a war in Eastern Europe. For now at least, and is busy fighting a losing battle to Ultraman. But it turns out this was all just a distraction by Lex Luthor so he could find the Fortress of Solitude and steal information that would allow him to defeat Superman. I mean, considering what Ultraman is eventually revealed to be, he already has everything he needs to take Superman down, but whatever, let's just go with it.
No, he quite literally doesn't. Once again, throughout the movie, we see Lex try to completely tear down Superman's name to the utmost extent, so that he's viewed more positively than Superman, and then eventually kill him. He's the complete opposite of Superman and hates that Superman is handed God status on a silver platter, and he has to be careful when doing this so that it doesn't expose his true motivations to the government. So no, he doesn't have what he needs yet. Pay attention.
Anyway, Luthor eventually finds and decodes a message from Jor-El telling Superman to conquer and subjugate the peoples of Earth, which naturally doesn't go down too well when it gets released to the public. Superman's forced to turn himself in to the US government so he can try to clear his name, but instead he gets handed over to Luthor, who sends him to a pocket universe that he created to hold superpowered prisoners, because apparently that's a thing you can just do now.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Okay, are you gonna explain a problem here? Lex is one of the most powerful people on the planet and has the facilities to keep Superman contained. So explain why it makes no sense that he's the one that keeps Superman contained, especially since Lex literally works with the government already.
Oh yeah, and if you were following the leaks, this is also where he keeps his army of mutated monkeys chained to computers who work night and day to stoke anti-Superman resentment on social media. Yes, this is real. This is a thing which is in the movie.
Yes, it is. And it's amazing.
Honestly, a couple of dozen guys in an office in India could have done the same job with less effort, but what can I say? It's James Gunn's Superman by James Gunn.
Oh yeah, let's just cut to a scene where a super genius psychopath just has some random dudes in an office in India doing this, instead of a funny scene of monkeys spreading anti-Superman propaganda online. Yeah, that would really benefit the film.
Also, you'd think the ability to create entire universes would kind of negate the need to fight one man for control of a tiny fraction of one planet. But again, whatever, just don't think about it too much.
I think you do need to think about it a little bit more, because where in the movie are Lex and Superman ever fighting over control over a piece of the planet? Please give me a timestamp in the movie where this becomes a plot point. Are we referring to the ruse that Lex Luthor puts up that he's trying to get a piece of land in the foreign country? You mean the ruse? That's not an actual plot point or motivation of Lex's?
Anyway, with Superman out of action, it's up to Lois Lane to join forces with the Justice Gang, and yes, that's another thing which is in this movie.
You're trying to make a point about a thing that the movie is self-aware is goofy, being goofy. It's like, wow, a group of people in a comic book movie have a goofy name. What a flaw you've pointed out here. You know, I'm really starting to see why this movie is a mess.
Krypto the Superdog was another divisive aspect of the trailers. Some people loved him, others hated him, but really, he's not a big deal in the movie at all. He shows up from time to time when the script needs him, and then conveniently vanishes when it doesn't.
When does Krypto ever conveniently vanish when the plot needs him to? Can you give an example?
The only problem, though, is that it's not a particularly good Superman movie, and a lot of that problem stems from James Gunn himself. I think it's about time people stopped worshipping this guy like he's some cinematic messiah sent down to save Hollywood. His recent track record has been spotty at best, and although he's definitely good at what he does only works within a pretty narrow comfort zone, and if he's forced to step too far outside it, he seems kind of lost and uninspired. I get the feeling he would have much rather made a Justice Gang movie because it would have played to all his favourite sensibilities as a filmmaker, forcing another bunch of likeable misfits to work together to take down a bigger threat. But there was too much riding on this film for him to trust it to anyone else, and so we ended up with a Superman movie that can't quite seem to keep its focus on Superman.
So, are you going to elaborate on any point in this video as to why the movie isn't good? I mean, we're 8 minutes in and all you've given me is like 3 plot criticisms that don't even hold up, and a bunch of blanketed statements where the movie falls without any proper explanation as to why. Like, the only criticism that he puts in this video that I've already kind of went over in the Ben Shapiro video is saying like, oh, the Justice Gang don't have much to them in this movie, which I didn't include in this video. Like, he says it in his video, but I'm not including it because we already went over that in the other videos. There's no point in just repeating it. But like, the rest is what I've just said it was. You haven't given anything. This review is shit.
Another shortcoming of Gunn's that's become more obvious in recent years is the humour. When it comes to writing dialogue, Gunn is basically a second-generation follower of Whedonism. Much like Taika Waititi, he seems to understand what made Joss Whedon's writing so effective in superhero movies and definitely knows how to replicate it effectively, but what he lacks is Whedon's finely tuned sense of restraint. A bit of carefully crafted levity at just the right moment can really enhance a dramatic scene, but too much at the wrong time soon becomes an irritating distraction, and that's exactly what Superman suffers from. Every time the movie's on the brink of some intense, heartfelt moment, it's almost always undercut by some shitty, badly executed joke, like it's afraid to ever take itself seriously. Not every movie has to be Guardians of the Galaxy, James. You're allowed to move on in life.
You know, for someone that likes to talk about people repeating bad habits like he's accusing James Gunn of, I'm still waiting in any of your videos that I've ever watched for you to give a proper elaboration for your criticisms. Like, you can't even give me an example right here of what you're talking about. Give me one example of where a joke undercuts the seriousness in a poor way. I mean, you said it's everywhere in the movie, so surely you can give at least one example, right? I mean, I can give you an example that I didn't like, and I actually forgot to mention this in my Superman video, but an example of this is when, right after Superman gives his, like, speech to Lex Luthor, Crypto comes in and starts attacking him, and Superman just sits there like a jackass saying, let go, instead of doing anything, when the dog could easily kill Lex right there, and Superman obviously doesn't want that. You see how elaborating on a problem actually gives the viewer something to think about and explains why this is an issue? Wow, that's crazy.
There's just so much shit thrown at you in this film, so many characters that don't get the time and space they need to breathe and develop, so much world-changing technology and truncated subplots that it becomes kind of overwhelming after a while. By the time the credits rolled, I actually felt tired of it all. It's a film that never quite finds its narrative focal point, that's in such a rush to introduce so much new stuff that it ends up getting in its own way. And it doesn't help that it feels like we're dropped into a story halfway through the telling, like there should have been another movie before this one to properly introduce Superman, Lex Luthor and the Justice Gang. Instead, they're all just thrown into the mix without any explanation, like we're just expected to know who and what everyone is.
And here we go again with the mindless yapping. What are these characters that don't get the proper development? What are these subplots and crazy technology that keep jumbling up the plot? We already went through part of that in Ben Shapiro's video where he failed miserably at saying this, and Drinker is just continuing the same thing. He also says that the movie feels like it drops us halfway into a story, but again, doesn't explain why. Like, we get a very clear and easy to follow plot and main characters that the movie explores throughout its runtime. What exactly about the story are we missing that makes it feel like a halfway point we're jumping into? Even when the Justice Gang is introduced, we were already told in the beginning of the movie that metahumans are in the world. So when metahumans are in the world and they pop up to help Superman, it doesn't feel like it's out of nowhere. Anyways, that's the end of Drinker's video. Now I'm gonna move on to the final video, and this is from a channel named Ranting for Vengeance, and he made this video before the movie actually came out.
But now Superman has rolled around and we have a few new clips and teasers. And an interview with Spastic Man himself, David Corn Sweat. Yeah, the dude has sweat in his name. That's already off-putting. Not to mention the fact that he looks like he has cancer. But really, have a look at this teaser and tell me that it isn't absolute shit.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be...
Lex, I tried to stop him.
It's fine, Heather. Superman, we finally meet. Would you like a coffee?
Where's the dog?
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
So immediately he's channeling his inner autistic rage. You've seen it across all the trailers. We've come to know it and love it. It's autistic man, spastic man, retard man. The guy who just yells at innocent women, kids, dogs. Speaking of dogs, he also gets his ass kicked by them.
What the fuck are you talking about?
You needed a father.
Okay, I lied. We're not going through this video. I think that speaks for itself. But with that said, I thank you all for watching. I would appreciate anyone becoming a channel member for as little as $1 a month if you would like to support the channel and to get most of my videos early. Or if you don't want to spend money, simply liking the video and subscribing also helps a lot. And if you even made it this far in the video, also helps a lot. But I hope you all enjoyed. And yeah.